Hey everybody, Jane here, and we are doing April and May as a wrap up together. There's a couple reasons for this. The first being simply that a lot of the books that I'm going to be discussing showed up in other videos, and I didn't want to go too far into depth with the ones that I've already talked about at length in other videos. The other reason is I have been slumpy and not in a great mental health space, and so been a little bit not into recording. I felt up to it today, so we're going to do this. But I have just been a little bit on the struggle bus. A lot of personal stuff is happening, which, I mean, I know you guys have heard that before. This is not the first time that I've burned out and taken a break from doing a lot of recording. Unfortunately, that happens when you live a busy human life, and not all of us are super equipped to deal with all the crazy changes in our lives. I did kind of mention some of the things going on in the different Buzzwordathon vlogs that I've made, but I will do a personal update a bit later to give you guys some ideas of what kind of sort of things are going on with me as a writer, as a mom, as a human being. But today, let's talk books. If this is your first time doing one of my wrap-ups, I go from lowest rated, which in this case is my DNFs, to highest rated. I did have one 5-star in the past 2 months. I would also like to point out I've been incredibly slumpy due to all the reasons I mentioned, and so some of these books may have been ones that in a different headspace I would have felt differently about. Please keep that in mind as I review them for you. So the first book we're going to talk about is a DNF. It was called Outdrawn. This is one that I got from Libby. I was traveling. I believe it is a sapphic romance, and I read it April. So there's a lot I don't remember about it, but I will tell you what I do remember. I remember that there were 2 women who are hired by this company to draw comics, and they are immediately in conflict with each other over who's going to control the drawing. The one who's been there longer didn't feel like they needed to hire the new person. They have very different visions for this comic, and they are presumably going to become enemies to lovers fall in love. I was not a fan of the audiobook. This is one that if there is a physical book, I would be interested in reading. However, I did not find a physical book of this on Libby, and so I ended up DNFing it without finishing it. Again, this was a situation where I think it was just the narration that wasn't working for me, but if it works for you, it might be worth reading the book. It was not the book's fault. It was just I wasn't vibing with the narration, and it was a day I needed an audiobook for traveling. The second book that was a DNF this month, or the last 2 months, there's quite a few of these, was The Profitable Author. I won this from a Goodreads giveaway. And every month I try to write or read one book about writing craft. And that was my book for the month of April. And sadly, it was not working for me. So this book very much focuses on the entrepreneurial aspect of authorship. And I think my issue with it was that a lot of it was stuff I'd heard before. And a lot of it is stuff that I don't think is very practical in practice. It's advice that people are given, but it's mostly about how to get your author business to make you money even when you're not selling books or that is not focused on books. There is a ton of hyperlinks within this book for references, which made it very complex to navigate as a ebook. But also, I don't know that it's practical for most people. It's one of those things, they're taking really, really broad ideas that don't apply to most authors and making it seem like it should apply to most authors. And that's really just not, I don't think, the reality. I think if you've never read any book about authorpreneurship, or if you've never watched Joanne Penn, maybe go watch Joanne Penn before you read this. She's probably, in my opinion, a better resource. But, this book, if you've never, ever, ever explored authorpreneurship, this might be the place. This might be a resource that would work for you. I've been studying authorpreneurship for years, and it was the same old information I've seen again and again and again. It didn't really bring anything new. It didn't bring any added value. And again, I felt a lot of the ideas presented were impractical and things that most authors, particularly fiction authors, are not really going to have a use for. The next DNF was The White Cat's Revenge as plotted from the Dragon King's lap. I believe this was in the April Buzzwordathon, although I'm not entirely sure. I know the prompt was animals. This has an animal in the cover, so I feel like it was. But don't quote me. I didn't get very far. This was not what I thought it was going to be. And so I just decided I wasn't interested. There is a girl and her friend or frenemy, I guess. Her and her friend get transported to this world. Her friend is like loved by everybody, and for some reason she doesn't like her friend very much, and her friend gets made princess of the castle or something, and she gets run off, and something happens and she can turn into a cat some of the time. I'm not explaining it very well. This book's pacing was crazy, and it was like, this book itself probably could have been 10 mangas. There was so much story, so much stuff not explained, and it was just boom, 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 and I did not enjoy it. It was too much. So I did not finish it. The next DNF is probably one of my more disappointing. This one is in the May Buzzwordathon video, and that is Passenger to Frankfurt by Agatha Christie. Y'all know, if you've been here for a hot minute, I love Agatha Christie. I really wanted to read her to zero. I am probably going to try all of her books, but I will not be reading her to zero because I could not finish this stupid book. This book is about a guy who is riding a train. No, I'm sorry, it's a plane. He's in a plane, and he works for the government in England, and it is probably, I believe, the 1960s, maybe early 1970s, and he meets this girl, and she is all like, hey, I'm going to drug your drink. I need you to drink it anyway, and I'm going to steal your passport and some of your clothes because I'm going to go and pretend that I'm you because somebody's trying to kill me. And he just goes along with it, which is one of my issues, is there's a lot of logic problems in this book. And ultimately, like, she returns his stuff to him, and he finds out that she's a spy, and he gets dragged into all this spy-related stuff. This book, spy stuff and Christie is just not for me. I love her mysteries. Her spy stuff is not something I can engage with well. She did a Poirot where she kind of made him like a 007 character. It was the Big Four. It is so far my least favorite Poirot. Yeah, I do not enjoy, I think, her spy stuff. That's just not something that she does in a way that works for me. So this book, I got fairly far in and just could not go further. There was also a lot of fat phobia in it, and particularly, like, the thing that made me stop was this description again and again, a very detailed description of an obese person and how disgusting they were. And I just was like, no, I don't want to. I'm not doing this. Thanks, Christie, but we're not playing these games today. Okay, and our last DNF for the 2 months was A Girl's Guide to Love and Supper Clubs. And I will tell you, this is a soft DNF for me. I may go back to it. I don't think so, but I didn't hate it. I just ran out of time and ran out of desire and was like, I don't know that I hate this enough to throw it off my shelf. Normally when I DNF something, I just don't finish it ever again, and I never look at it again, and I get rid of it. I'm not sure that I'm getting rid of this book. It might sit on my shelves a little longer so I can decide if I want to try it again, but I was not enjoying it very much. This is about Hannah, and Hannah makes all the bad decisions in the world. So in the beginning of the book, Hannah is living with this guy who is an absolute jerk to her, and she keeps living with him and keeps living with him and keeps living with him until he throws her out. And then she, to try to feel better about herself and her life, starts creating this illegal supper club in her new landlord's house. So she's been given the key to her landlord's house so that she can go in and in case there's an emergency, and instead she's throwing lavish supper clubs in his house. And one of the guys coming to the supper club I have a feeling is a future love interest. Hannah just makes the worst choices possible, and I felt frustrated with her throughout the reading and just kind of wanted to wring her neck the whole time and did not understand why she made the decision she did. So yeah, I was like really angry at the book and was like, I don't want to read anymore right now. So it's a soft DNF. I may go back and try, see if Hannah grows and matures a little bit further in the book. I got just about halfway and there was not a lot of maturity happening, but maybe it happens. She annoyed me though. I did not enjoy. All right, so didn't have any 1 stars, didn't have any 2 stars, which is pretty normal for me. Those books tend to be ones that have major, major problems. Everything from here on out is at least is a book. The 3s are books that book. I may not have really enjoyed them. I may have criticisms of them, but they are at least bare minimum a book that books. And the first one of those is Unlikely Friendships. This was in my April Buzz Readathon. Basically, it's a lot of really, 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 really short stories about animal friendships. I found it repetitive. I found it a lot of the stories I didn't know if they really should have been in this book. Some of the stories were good. Most of them were meh. Some of them were kind of dumb. If you want something real quick to read to make you happy and see lots of pictures of animals, maybe, but otherwise I wouldn't really recommend picking this book up. I did not overall enjoy it all that much. Our next book is also in the April Buzzwordathon. The prompt was animals, for both the word in the title and the image on the cover. So this is Morgana and Oz, Volume 2. Morgana is a witch. Oz is a vampire. Oz shows up to a house party at Morgana's and gets turned into a cat by accident. Morgana is working to turn him back. There is tension between the vampires and the witches, and Morgana is trying to help solve these issues. I liked Volume 1. I didn't really care for Volume 2. I don't really remember why. I just remember being like not as invested in it. We have another graphic novel. We're still in the 3 stars, and this one is Swan Lake. This is a middle grade about a girl who is a swan half of the time. It's a middle grade retelling of Swan Lake, and she meets up with this other girl, and they go on this adventure to try to get Odette's curse broken. This was again one that I read for the April Buzzwordathon. My issue is it's middle grade, and sometimes middle grade can be fun as an adult, and this was not one of those. So sometimes middle grade it is a little bit, it still can be enjoyed as an adult person, and sometimes it's a little too goofy and zany for me, and this was one of those cases where I was like, it was just very juvenile, and it was fine. I think if you have a child who has never read Swan Lake or seen Swan Lake or whatever we do with Swan Lake, participated in Swan Lake, this is probably worth giving them a try. I, like I said, felt it was very juvenile. I appreciated some things about it, but overall, my experience with it was, why? As an adult reader, why? As a kid reader, absolutely interesting, fascinating, and there was some pretty interesting, the author explained why Swan Lake is something they're interested in and how important it was to them. So when I say why, I don't mean it as it sounded, which is probably pretty bad attitude. See? Yeah, I think the writer created it for valid reasons. It's a valid book. It just was not entertaining to me as an adult reader. The next book we have is a short story in an omnibus I own. And it is, the omnibus is True Petectives, and the book in it was the Petectives Christmas Party. This also was in my April Buzzwordathon video. This is about cat detectives. There is Yoshi and Gatsby, and they work together to solve pet crime in their neighborhood. I want to say these are also middle grade-ish. I am not entirely sure, though, that they really hardcore fall into either middle grade category or not. But we have a dog in the neighborhood who's having attempts on his life, and Gatsby and Yoshi are trying to figure out who wants to take this dog out. It's fine. It's cute. It's an easy read. There was a little bit too much religion in it for me. I know it's a holiday themed book, but I felt like there could have been a little bit less religion as a non-religious person. I could have done without it in a animals book, but it was fine. It was fine. I didn't hate it. I will read another one, the last book in the omnibus, because I've already read the first two. There's one more book in the omnibus that I'm going to read, and then I probably will not go out of my way to read anymore. They are cute and fun. Again, a little bit young. This one didn't hit quite right for me for a lot of reasons. The mystery was just so, but I mean, it was not a bad time. And the last book in our 3-star category is my author book of the month for May, and it was also in Buzzwordathon for May, and that is How to Write Good. Okay, this book is actually not about writing, which I didn't realize it until I was like a little ways through. It seems like it would be about writing, and it kind of, if you look at like the table of contents, is about writing, but it's not really about writing. It is about Ryan Higa, who I believe is a YouTuber. I don't know who this guy is. I'd never interacted with his work. Telling us about the difficulties he had in middle school switching schools. So he was an Asian kid who moved to a middle school where he was a minority and struggled to make friends, and found that comedy was something that he did that helped him and his mental health. There is quite a few trigger warnings for bullying, ideation, all kinds of stuff. Very little about writing. There is some cute little cartoon comic things that are in the book, which made it an easy read, which is the only reason I finished it, because had it been all text, we would never have gotten through it. But probably like 50% of the book is, comics, easy to read. So I was just, it was one of those that DNFing it seemed like too much of a chore, and I just finished it. But if you're looking on for a book on writing, that is not it. If you're looking for a book on this Ryan guy, maybe it is. I have no idea who Ryan is, but if you are a fan of him, I could see reading that book. If you're looking for a book on writing, skip it. All right, so we are moving now into the 4-star, so books that I actually genuinely enjoyed, but were not new favorites. The first one, we have The Well of Ascension. This is the second book in the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. I did consume this as an audiobook. So we have these characters. Vin and Elend are the main characters in this book particularly. They have, in the previous book, Mistborn, they did a big thing, and now they're having to deal with the consequences of the big thing and how the world is different now. And I don't want to spoil Mistborn for you, but I will say I liked Well of Ascension a little bit better than I did like Mistborn. I really enjoy the characters. The ending, I'm not sure how I feel about, as far as a lot of really cool stuff happened, but it makes me hesitant to read the last book because I think this book might be my favorite book in the series. We'll see. There is a dog in it, a talking dog, who I absolutely love. That was probably my favorite character in the book. And there's a lot more, I would say, if you love Mistborn, or if you love Mistborn for the Pygmalion elements, you may not like this one as much. There are less balls in this book. And I said that to my brother because he'd read the first book and complained there was too many balls. Vin going to dance, the dancing kind of balls. There's like no balls in this book. which is a little bit of a detriment for me because I read historical romance. Also, Vin and Ellen were doing a lot of exploring of their feelings and the complexities of their new roles and their feelings for each other, inside of the roles, outside of those roles, etc. There was a lot of relational stuff, which I appreciated, but it's very different in a lot of ways from the first book. I did think I liked it a little bit better than the first book. I am not sure how I'll feel about the third book. I am going to go into the third book, but a lot of things changed in this book. It's a long book. It was good though, and I was engaged in it. And again, for somebody who is slumpy, to be able to get through a big, hunky, chunky book. And I think I probably only read the second half of it in June, not June, May, April or May, whenever I finished it, because I had previously started it and the audiobook had run out on my loan, so I had to get it again from the library. So I did read it in 2 parts, but I was engaged. I was enjoying it, and it was really, really good. And, I do suggest reading it in an audiobook if you struggle sometimes with a little bit, like Sanderson is big and chunky, and there's a lot of words and there's a lot of weird stuff happening, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. That's the end of that. The next 4-star we have is All My Patients Are Under the Bed, Memoirs of a Cat Doctor. This was in my April Buzzwordathon. It is a memoir of a guy who is a cat doctor. It's reminiscent of James Herriot, but tonally a little bit different. The guy is very curmudgeon-y as he talks about the different cats that he has treated in his practice. It was fun. If you're a cat lover, it's probably worth it. The guy who wrote the book, I didn't necessarily always vibe with who he was. The stories are told in vignettes rather than fiction like James Herriot. So you get and this, I visited this cat for this reason. Oh, and this cat for this reason, and this for this reason. And it was a little bit vignette-y. And not always, or even I would say sometimes stream of thought more than vignette. It's just boom, 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 boom. You may have a chapter where he talks about 5 different cats he saw, and you don't get real complete stories. There's also some really outdated pet care information, but I'm a cat lover, I'm a dog lover, I'm an animal lover, so I enjoyed the book overall for what it was. But I would still suggest James Herriot over that one. The next book I read was a short book called In Mercy Reign. This is from the Wayward Children series, and it is another story of Jack. For those who've been following me, Jack and Jill are not my favorite characters in the Wayward Children series. This is another stupid Jack story. I'm so tired of Jack and Jill. It was fine. I enjoy the Wayward Children series. None of the books in the series have been super bad. I was engaged with it, other than rolling my eyes of why do we have to have another Jack and Jill story? I'm really tired of Jack and Jill. But it wasn't bad. And there wasn't much I can say about it because number 1, I don't remember much about it. And number 2, I know it was super short. I read this one on my Kindle and it was super, super short. The next book that got a 4-star for me was The Fake Mate. This is a medical paranormal romance. I don't remember a lot about it. There is these 2 doctors, one's an ER doctor and one's a cardiologist, and they have to fake date. Well, not even fake date, be fake mates, which is a level above dating. So in this world, this is Omegaverse. This is Omegaverse. The guy is an alpha and she's an omega. And it comes out at work that he's an alpha and didn't disclose this on his employment application or something. And alphas have this reputation of being aggressive unless they're mated to an omega or mated to somebody. And alphas and omegas are like cats and catnip. They're a big thing. So he asks her to, she is tired of her grandma trying to set her up on dates. And she kind of is like, hey, will you pose for this video with me? So that my grandma thinks that I'm, dating you or seeing you so that she'll leave me alone. And he's like, sure, but you should be my fake mate for work so that I can keep my job. And so they start out with this fake mating thing and fall in love. It's Omegaverse. It's interesting dynamics. I've dipped my toes in the Omegaverse before. I enjoyed this. I don't know that Omegaverse is super my thing. It wouldn't turn me off of a book, but I wouldn't necessarily like seek out every book ever on the Omegaverse. This one was fine. There was some stuff near the end that kind of annoyed me. I was worried that the author would do a thing, and they managed to turn it around, but I did have some frustrations towards the end with some of the stuff that happened, but it worked out. I will also say, another complaint I had about this book, the words that were chosen. There is a particular word that I've not heard used before for the secretions of a female, during bedroom time, that I was very tired of hearing by the end of the book. Very tired of. And it's one I hadn't heard before, and I was like, could we please stop saying this word? Please, please, please. But overall, I had a good time with Fake Mate. I enjoyed the characters. I thought they were interesting. Once we got into the smutty bits, it was a little more smutty than I prefer, but that is kind of a thing in the Omegaverse all the time, forever. I didn't hate it. It wasn't too much, but I definitely was like, okay, could we get on to the story now? So anyway, not bad. Was not a new favorite, but I enjoyed it. I'd read more books like this. Oh, and it was one of the few medical romances that I did not have a whole lot of criticisms on, probably because they didn't spend nearly as much time doctoring as other medical romances do. I work in healthcare, and so medical romances tend to irritate me because they are so wrong all the time. But this one did not. That I want to talk about, and my 4 stars is Ice Planet Holidays. This is a short Ice Planet Barbarian book. The only reason it gets a 4-star is Ruby Dixon is queen, and she'd have to do something really, really, really irritating to make me give her less than a 4. I always enjoy the Not Hoth world, and I generally enjoy her books a little more than the average book. However, I will say this might be one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite, of the Ice Planet Barbarian books. Now, it is a novella, and that is part of my problem. I needed this to be novel length. It was not, and it should have been. So in this book, we have so much happening for the length of the book. We have Georgie about to have her first child. We have Claire, who is having issues with Beck. Her and Beck have been like a couple, but Beck is kind of being aggressive with her to the point of like it's a DV situation. And so she decides to leave him, and they are planning this holiday party. They're trying to bring holidays to Not Hoth. It is a whole lot packed into an incredibly short book that did not feel as developed as I wanted it to be. I have so many issues with it, but also like I love the Ice Planet world. I love the characters, and I love the general concept of trying to bring holidays to the aliens. I have read her 2 other holiday-related shorts and liked them a lot better than this. This was the only one that I still had left, and I will almost say I'm sad that I read it. I'm glad that I read it from a completionist standpoint, but I could have done without it, and I wish it would have been so much different. So let me kind of hit the 3 points that I want to hit. The holiday bit was great. The holiday stuff is always fun. They are trying to explain mistletoe to the Ice Planet Barbarian guys, and like the guys do not understand mistletoe or holidays or any of that, and that part of the book is golden. That part was so much fun. Georgie's story I really enjoyed. We do have a discussion about, I don't want to give too much away here, about the limitations of the barbarians or the Saquis medical capabilities. They don't have like trained medical people. You have, I think her name's Malak, who is the healer, but she heals by talking to the Queen. if it is something that the Queen cannot fix, they don't have a lot of medical knowledge. And Georgie is having some birth-related complications that are not Queen fixable. And I appreciated that discussion. I am not sure I liked how it worked, but I thought it was important. That was an important point. The biggest part of this book that I did not like was Claire and Beck, and I think Erwin is the guy that Claire ends up with. Don't quote me on that, because all the guys run together for me because their names are so weird. Anyway, I loved Beck and Ellie's story, and I don't know that I would have liked it had I read how Beck treated Claire. So Beck, from what I had read, was always kind of misunderstood. He had a good heart. He did the wrong things, but with the right intentions. In this book, he's a freaking bully. He's terrible. We don't get his POV, and maybe that would have softened things, but I don't think it was intended to. I think he's meant to be the bad guy and the bully, and then just like later, Ruby had to like give him a love interest, and so she changed him up. I know in the second holiday book, she kind of made him a little bit better as far as he reconciled or tried to reconcile with Claire and go to her and be like, hey, I was a real jerk. I'm sorry about that. I was a terrible person. Can we be friends? The way he acts in this book from Claire's perspective is awful and indefensible and unforgivable. And she is genuinely afraid of him. And I did not like that we did that and then redeemed Beck later. I don't know that Beck was redeemable without a little more POV for him. Also, because there was so much focus on Claire trying to get away from Beck in this, you know, very potentially dangerous situation. Like, she is really concerned that things are going to escalate to physical violence, where they are already a little bit, I mean, they're already bad. There's already some stuff happening, but she's really afraid that it's going to escalate to physical violence. And, you know, I don't feel like we got a good narrative with her and the guy who ends up being her person, other than him like standing up for her and being like, no, Beck, leave her alone. You know, other than defending her from Beck, I didn't feel like we got a whole lot of him and his relationship with Claire. And I just feel like this could have been a whole novel. We could have had a whole novel about them and maybe had Beck's POV so that he didn't look like such a monster, especially if we're going to redeem him later in the story. And I assume, and this is a horrible assumption because I don't know, but I assume Ruby didn't have the plan to redeem Beck later. He was going to just be a bad guy. And then, oops, she's now got to do like 50 billion books because she sells like hotcakes. I know in the author's note of the third book, that was one of the things that she discussed, is that, you know, she thought she was only doing 3 books. And so that's why she made some of the decisions she did early in the series and then had to kind of almost like retroactively fix things later because she didn't have the different love stories. She had to go back and do flashback love stories for like the last 5, 10, however many books in the series. So I am assuming all of this was early and she was just trying to like give Claire a story and do a couple things and didn't, you know, wasn't thinking long term in Beck and Ellie, you know, 15 books later. But yeah, so this kind of ruined my Beck and Ellie book a little bit. I'm glad I read Beck and Ellie before I read this because I don't think I could have forgiven Beck, and then his bad behavior in the beginning of the Beck and Ellie book would have been so much worse if I'd have known that he was, you know, borderline a DV situation with Claire. So yeah. There was a lot that I didn't like about this book. Underwritten. The whole situation kind of messed up how I felt about books later. But it's still an Ice Planet Barbarian book, and I still had a better time than I would with like 90 other % of the books that I could have potentially picked up to read instead. The next book on our list is The Glittering Edge. This is a book that I read for the May Buzzwordathon, and I had a good time with it. It is YA. It is about three teenagers. We have Penny, we have Corey, and we have Alonzo. Alonzo is a witch, and him and Corey's family have a long-term feud. So Alonzo's grandfather supposedly put a curse on Corey's family. And Penny's mother gets caught up in this curse that is on Corey's family. So these three teenagers get together to try to break the curse. It is a cute book about friendship. It's a cute book about, understanding who people really are. There wasn't really a love triangle, which I was grateful for. I mean, there was kind of hints at it, but it was not something that I felt like distracted from the book. And I was really engaged in the plot. Can we break the curse and save Penny's mother? Can we figure out more about the origins of the curse? Because there's a little bit of a mystery, because Alonzo is like, I don't think my grandpa cast this curse on your family. And so them trying to figure out what actually happened. This is an ARC copy I have. I read it. It just came out in May. So it is a fairly new release, and it is an ARC that I read. So there could be some changes that happened after I read it, because that's how ARCs work. But overall, a solid read. I really enjoyed it. And I would recommend picking it up. It is book 1 in a series. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to pick up book 2. So if I win it in a Goodreads giveaway, this was a Goodreads giveaway win. If I win book 2, I would read it, but I wouldn't necessarily, I don't think, go looking for it. I'm not eagerly awaiting book 2, but I felt like book 1 was a solid read, and the changes or the things, it didn't end on such a cliffhanger that I felt like it couldn't be a complete read in and of itself. So yes, I do recommend this one. I talk about it quite at length in the May Buzzwordathon. And the last book of the month is the only 5-star of the month, and unfortunately, it was a reread. I was traveling and I needed an audiobook, and I had tried several audiobooks and just so many were not hitting. And I was like, I just need something that I know I like. So I picked up Barbarian Alien. This is the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. If you are a new reader to the Ice Planet Barbarian series, particularly if you are going to be consuming it via audiobook, I recommend starting at book 2. Book 1 is a lot. Book 1, I liked by the end of it, but I almost DNF'd because there is all the trigger warnings in the beginning of the book. So book 2 for me is a good starting place, and I loved book 2. I want to say I gave Ice Planet Barbarians the first book a 4 and then the second book a 5. Still a 5-star read. In it, our characters are Liz and Rohash. Again, the names might be wrong for the guys a little bit, because there's like a lot of our names as well. But anyway, the dude, Liz, is his fated mate. He has waited forever to have a fated mate, just like all the other Ice Planet guys. She shows up and she is just being difficult. She does not want the Quee, which is the little parasite she has to have to save her life. Without it, she will die. And he is not going to let that happen. So he forces her to have the Quee. And then because he knows he's going to get into some trouble, he runs off with her. And they spend a lot of time trying to get to know each other and falling in love. Then eventually they end up back with the barbarians, and he gets punished for running off with her. And she fights that punishment because she's sassy and is going to get her way, gosh darn it. Liz is one that I don't know. I didn't like her at first, and I still sometimes think that as a character she annoys me, but she's grown on me throughout the series. And so like going back and rereading this was a little bit of like, okay, I can understand why she's so prominent in the series, and I like her a lot better now than I did the first time I read through. I also liked him and felt bad for him and his plight. He is deformed slightly. He has a broken horn and some scarring based on, if I recall, there was a hunt that went wrong, and so he got some damage from it. And so he thinks he's ugly. He's never had like any of the girl aliens show any interest in him. So he's very excited to have this mate. He's, the virgin, and I love me a virgin hero. Um, and, but she like has said that he's scary looking and stuff like that. And so he really has a lot of like body image issues. And I love me a man or a woman that has body image issues. I love stories with that because as a plus size woman, body image issues is part of my life and has affected my love life. And I just find this book so relatable. So yeah, I'm kind of sad that the only book I read this month that was a 5-star was one that I've already read before, but it was a nice place to visit. And I really needed that, especially in the slumpy world that I was in. I just needed to go back to Not Hoth in a good way and visit people that I adored and loved. So yeah, those are all the books that I read for April and May. Please let me know what you've been reading. Are you doing the Buzz Readathon for Books in Lala? If so, what books have been have you been reading? Are you reading a lot of books? Are you just reading one book? Any successes? Any books that have kind of like not quite hit your expectations? Leave it all in the comments below. If you want to leave a comment but don't really have anything to say, just want to support me with the comments, which I appreciate because, YouTube algorithms, you can just put an emoji of a book. I appreciate it. And also, like I said, feel free to leave any thoughts on any of the books I've read. This has been Jane, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the